Welcome to the Redirect Podcast, where we dig deep into the digital marketing trends shaping your brand's presence online. We break down what it all means, and more importantly, how you can actually do something about it. I'm your host, Jason Dodge, founder of Black Truck Media and Marketing. AI is everywhere right now, from promises of guaranteed rankings in ChatGPT to a flood of so-called AI experts in your LinkedIn feed. The noise can be absolutely overwhelming. So in this episode, I'm joined by fellow industry peer Nick LeRoy to cut through the hype and talk about what businesses should really be paying attention to, the red flags to watch out for, and really how to use AI as a tool without falling for the scams. We've got a lot to cover, so let's get into it. Hey everyone, welcome back to the show. Today I've got Nick LeRoy with me, SEO consultant, writer, and the brain behind SEO for Lunch, as well as SEO Jobs, PPC Jobs, a bunch of different things. But I wanted to dive in to an article that Nick had wrote, AI Optimization, the Next Generational Scam. I love it. I think having been in the search industry for over 20 years, I love when somebody kind of makes a pretty bold statement. So we're going to talk about why some of the AI hype smells a lot like, I don't know, old school SEO snake oil and how to spot scams and perhaps maybe what tools actually deserve your attention. So we'll kind of deep dive into that, the idea of what's really the signal versus the noise. So Nick, real briefly, quick introduction of yourself. I'd love to, a little background on yourself and kind of how long you've been in the SEO game.
Yeah, Jason, thank you again for having me on. I'm surprised for how long we've known each other that we haven't done this sooner.
Totally.
As you had said, Nick LeRoy. I've been in the SEO space for about over 15 years now, 10 years at first on agency side, and 5+ years now working for myself as a solo consultant. As Jason had mentioned, I write a weekly SEO for Lunch newsletter where I tend to take kind of a spicy take or a little bit of an alternate, take on topics that, a lot of the industry is probably thinking, but they're a little worried if they write it, their boss might see it and how it looks. So since I'm my own boss, I write what I want, and then you know what, I either get the benefit or not from it. As Jason had also said, big fan of trying to keep people employed. So been running SEOjobs.com for the last couple years, with the whole idea of I've been let go from a job. I know how hard LinkedIn and Indeed is to leverage for, any sort of marketing role in general. So I built the solution that I wish existed back when I was looking. And then that just kind of rolled over to the millions of requests I got from, great, you're helping out all the SEOs, but what about my paid media friends? So double down, PPC Jobs just went live a couple weeks ago. Check it out. Let me know what you love. Let me know what you hate.
That's awesome. Thanks, Nick. I'm excited to record this too, just kind of to your statement. I know I think we met originally, like most in the SEO space, we meet online first, right? Which is I love it. It's the OG way of connecting with folks, and then eventually in person. Oh man, I think it was at a MozCon a number of years ago. So and have really been connected ever since. So and obviously I think you also were involved in one of the pre-parties or something for you and Noah Lerner. Mm-hmm. I think it was last year even had thrown that at Brighton in San Diego. So it was great.
And we'll be doing it again this year as well for
That's
anybody who's listening, and if this is live before then.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's jump into let's just like rip the Band-Aid off here and get into it. So I love it when around when you wrote this article was when we were batting a lot of conversation internally. And I think there are a lot of good SEO folks in our industry that were also having probably similar conversations and sharing openly. SEO, search engine optimization, SEM, search engine marketing. Gosh, what's the difference of those two? We have a lot of acronyms already in the industry, right? EEAT, all the different acronyms. And then we get into AI overviews from Google. Then we get, that was a migration from SGE. Is that still a thing? Then we get into geo, right? SEO's dead. Geo's the new hotness. I think both of us, it's a fair statement to say that both of us are not on that bandwagon of let's adopt another acronym. We know that typically speaking, whether it's a consumer or business oriented person, a lot of our journey starts with a search.
Mm-hmm.
But search takes on a lot of different faces these days. And I think arguably so, it's been that way for a long time. This is just with AI being the shiny object, that's
Yep.
the new thing. So you brought up, I think, some really great points and wrote on the idea that there's a lot of red flags in AI guarantees and who's really an AI expert. So, for both of us in the business ownership space, business leadership space, someone invariably is going to come to us as a business owner or our clients, and they're going to kind of really give them this AI visibility pitch.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to hear from you, like what red flags, because I think there's a lot of vague terms out there, and a lot of them, is anybody really going to understand?
So Jason, I love that you're talking about this because I don't think it's addressed enough. Hence the reason that I brought it up in my article or my newsletter. I will preface it by saying, like, I think I can speak for you and I'm not saying AI isn't real, LLMs isn't good, like, or that you shouldn't, attempt to optimize for it.
Right.
What I'm trying to get at, and again, I think I can speak for both of us, is if we're being really blunt, like, we don't know what the heck we're optimizing for. Like, we barely know how to use this technology, let alone make sure that we are found. And going back to your point, we could talk about, semantic analysis scores and chunking our content. Like, we have ideas, but what I really want to get across is nobody, like, definitively knows what the heck they're doing. We're running a lot of tests.
Sure.
We're practicing, we're throwing things out there. It reminds me of early days of, like, SEO. But sorry, go ahead, Jason.
No. And I was going to say that I'm glad you mentioned that, because I do think that, again, for all of the noise that is out there about AI and has been for the last couple of years, it is exactly that. It is feeling like early days of SEO in the sense of testing, but measuring those things is difficult. But go ahead there.
No, so you nailed just the last part I was going to say before getting into your original question. Is I think the exciting part of this is, I think SEO, or let's just call it, I've been kind of going back and forth from organic visibility to non-paid media. But the point being is, search awareness is no longer defined by Google's search bar. And it never was beforehand, but because we got 95% of our value from it, that's what we talked about. That's what we sold. That's what leaders started expecting. So I can't speak for you, Jason, but I know I have gotten the question a million times, like, hey, should we be creating video for YouTube? Will that help our SEO? And my response is always this, like, clunky, I don't know, like, the answer officially is no, but it makes your content richer, which means it could get shared. But what we really meant by that, and again, I'll speak for myself, was the odds of you being able to measure incremental success on your core website by creating a video was nominal. When in reality, we should be saying we can measure core website and YouTube, and 1 + 1 is 2. But again, that's where we kind of got in trouble, because we taught our clients to look at, revenue and sessions on core site being success.
That's right.
And we knew better than to, derail resources and time and budget off site, because we weren't going to get credit.
Yeah, I mean, just like saying from an old school SEO perspective, I don't know, what is the value of ranking for a specific keyword? Can anyone actually pinpoint that? And I'm coming at that from a data back perspective with having organic and paid media, having our teams blend data and merge it and say, ooh, that one specific keyword, because, in the corpus of data that is out there, I'm sure it's just that one keyword. Ranking number 2 is what generated. No, there's a lot of variabilities at stake there. And so let me come back to this. I'm guessing terms like vector embeddings or cosine similarities, and without any real explanation, should perhaps make our spidey senses tingle a little bit. Is that an accurate statement or a bold one?
Yeah, no, I think it's a yes and no. Like if there's a evolution of it depends, it goes from it depends to both yes and no. And the reason that I say that is, and I outlined this a little bit in the article, is when we have these, and I'm going to use air quotes, AI experts, I think a lot of times they're going to pitch it without any of the acronyms. And so for me, that's one of the red flags. And Jason, I know you read this, and I made a very salacious headline with kind of like a mock like phone call or conversation. And part of it was sleazy sales guy pitching to, intelligent marketing woman, and she, says, hey, what do you think about like vector analysis and, RAG and, all these type of things, in which they just respond, nope, like you're going to rank number one. So to your point, I think that there is a balance between it. Like no good salesperson can come in and sell via these acronyms. But if you don't hear anything about it, especially when you're talking about process, that is literally like my number one red flag.
I think that's really good. It's funny. I was just at an event in Chicago a few weeks ago. Andy Crestodina from Orbit Media was there, and so he was guest speaking, but he and I had a couple of conversations offside, and and again, folks in our industry who are going hard at the absolute, if we want to call it the science side of it, of vector embeddings and all these different elements. That's awesome, because those are the people that help advance our industry and have advanced our industry. And I'm not naming names. They've done that year over year over year. And they're talking about things right now that if you pay attention to and follow, give it a year, give it 2 years. And those are the things that are probably going to be baked into tool sets and things of that nature. But to your point, how can you really be a quote unquote expert or make these guarantees when we have, I'm thinking, I'm quoting Lily Ray right now. Back in July, she mentioned, there's new data at that time that showed 1% click-through rate on AI overviews. Meanwhile, we look at other notes. I think Glenn Alsop had posted there about public companies. You and I both had commented on this about search traffic is being down. We're seeing opportunities to get traffic from AI answered platforms. It's really wild to me, because in the plethora of industries that BlackTruck is involved in, there's many different industries. Man, I gotta say, we're seeing some traffic wins, but you don't get to know necessarily if it's from AI overviews. And and I know folks like Dana DiTomaso and others are working on ways in which we can track it and things of that nature. And that's great. But again, a lot of noise, not a ton of signal. You have to keep tracking. So who really is an AI expert? Do you think that we talk about the overuse of the term AI expert, and I think to your point, you hate that moniker of air quotes expert in a space that is moving so fast, but like we all can throw Chat GPT expert in there. Keep in mind, Chat GPT is one LLM, right? Like there's many others out there, but think about it, with search algorithms being, we're going to set the whole leaks on a shelf. Search algorithms still being, let's say, somewhat of a black box.
Yep. Very much so.
How are you really going to vet someone's expertise? Are you going to vet them that, I don't know. For me, I look at their experience like, hey, you were a real estate guy or person for the last 5 years, and then all of a sudden you're an AI expert? What? No, no.
Normally everyone becomes a real estate expert after they fail what they're doing.
Okay, so that's a spicy hot take. Absolutely it is. But like LinkedIn says this, right? So any person who is an AI expert in
and those who are not talking about generative search, but they're talking about how they're going to streamline your business or my business through agentic work and things of that nature. Okay, cool. Like, you have my interest. I'm interested in leveraging AI for that. But if I go and look at your background and see that you have zero experience leading up to that, that's a little fishy to me. So what on your, I guess the question to you then is, do you think that adaptability is more important than claiming to have all the answers?
So to answer that question, yes. Like, that is fundamentally what I would be looking for in a good partner. Cool. Rewind 2 seconds without going on too much of a tangent. I despise the word expert in anything to do with digital marketing. And, we have all been called the SEO expert or the PPC expert, and it's a nice, term of endearment, but I hate it as a marketing effort, because I don't believe in a world where algorithms are proprietary and things are changing every single day that you can be an expert. So if someone like you, Jason, and myself that has 15, 20 years of industry experience aren't qualified to be an expert, air quotes, how are these AI experts already reaching expert status? And tongue in cheek, within my post, I did just a site colon on LinkedIn, because we all know that people's job positions show up in, the search results. And if I recall, there's like 300,000 people that are claiming their primary role and title as expert of AI, ChatGPT, LLMs. And again, I get that, competence sells. But the reality is this is because we are like an unregulated industry, and I'm going to put AI with like digital. People can promise the world and then try to figure out how to deliver later.
Yeah. Instead of under promise, over deliver, it's going to be the fake it. We're back to fake it till you make it. And I think too, these models, the AI models, if you will, are it feels like you remember back when you would buy a computer, like back in the day when you bought a computer and the running joke was you bought the computer and it was already outdated by the time you walked out of the store. Yep. So think about this. So GPT-5, the biggest AI release of the year, is already outdated, right? I mean, its training data stopped September 30, 2024. It's almost a year out of date of data. Right. Again, it's an LLM. I know Brittany Muller's been on this for years already about, like, you have to fundamentally understand what an LLM is versus quote unquote the AI and how they're learning. So it's not that, I don't want to say the AI optimization, I want to say that it isn't a scam, but I think maybe to your point, to use a quote, it's selling it like it's 2010 SEO is.
Yeah. Well, Jason, let me interject here. I have spent a lot of head time like trying to justify and figure it out for myself, so that I can at least feel confident giving my opinion. Yeah. And this is where I've kind of landed, and I don't really blame anybody for this. I think in our world, regardless of your industry, your profession, your skill set, we all want an easy button. Like, in a perfect world, life is easy and we get maximum return, within that easy solution. So I think part of the reason that AI is so sellable, however you want to, and it can be gamed and it can be overpromised, is because people are still looking at AI and the amazing technology behind it, and they think it's a silver bullet. And I don't think our industry or the marketing world as a whole has been burned enough to realize that this is an amazing tool to help scale and expand smart people versus an opportunity to fire people, make an extra dollar in profit, and let the robots, run wild. And I think that's where we're at now. And I think because everybody wants that to be the case, that's why when somebody comes in and says, I'll get you to rank number 1, I'll automate all your work, I don't think it's that everybody is going, oh, this sounds like snake oil, you're selling me a horrible car. I think it's partially like you want it to be true.
Yeah.
And I think so you just kind of take it at face value. And the other end of it is, I think people are terrified of being viewed as like, we weren't an early adopter. I think there's also part of that. So in my opinion, I think a lot of the good marketers, and I'll even put salespeople in here, are leveraging AI to have bigger and broader conversations.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the way to go about it. When we talk about, how there's such an overlap in some of these tactics between optimizing for SEO and optimizing for AI. I personally, with my clients, have been able to push forward a couple initiatives that have been sidelined for months because I could say, hey, this also, when we're talking about indexation, it's like that has, the type of value to AI as well. It's like, ooh, AI. I've heard that. I like that. I have magical budget that came out of nowhere for AI, but not your SEO. So either way, a little bit of a tangent, but I do think that is one of the bigger issues, is just this idea of people don't want to be left behind. We all want an easy button. And you know what? If there's anybody, everybody wants to make money. And if we don't have to work hard for it, even better.
Well, we're seeing that. I think that's a really great point, and the whole idea with the easy button. We see all of the, I'll call them tool companies out there in the SEO space, all the SaaS products, right? Everybody from, SEMrush, Screaming Frog, Profound, you name it. SimilarWeb, everybody now, because of the APIs, because things have opened up and everybody has understood it now for, let's say, a year, now everyone has some degree of AI component to it, whether that's tracking, whether that's visibility, some sort of visibility, or some sort of writing component and things of that nature. And I think that's great. But keep in mind, back to your original point there, you didn't say it so bluntly, but I will, is that garbage in, garbage out. That is it, right? And we all know that if you make a bad prompt in the LLM and you go and change the prompt, you're going to get a different outcome, right? You're going to get maybe one that's more biased one way or the other. So it really is garbage in, garbage out. So whatever that within that tool space, whatever it's learned off of, that's what it knows, right? So much like a child, you have to teach it, and you have to provide it with feedback in order for it to learn and to grow. So okay, so let's think about this for a minute. Then if I'm a business trying to show up in AI driven search or chat results, whatever we're calling it, it doesn't matter. I like to label AI overviews as the new featured snippet, but what do you think the smart approach is? Like, how do we let's tackle that? Like, what's the smart approach, and then how do I, as a business owner, how do I test and improve without falling for the shiny promises? Because that's just something that I love that you said there's no silver bullet with it. We even say that in our proposals. Mm-hmm. And I'm very open about that there is no guarantee with this stuff, right? But you got to test it. So what's your take? What's the smart way to approach it? And then how do I test and improve without falling for the snake oil?
Yeah, so I think my answer is not sexy, and nobody's going to love hearing this, but I think it really goes back to the roots of what value do you believe it's going to provide to you? And I don't think people even get to that point. I think people think of it again as a missed opportunity. But what do people think they're going to derive from these, listings? Like you said, AIOs, 1% click-through rate. We won't even talk about how Google's gaslighting us and trying to tell us, what is working and what's not. So what I am always trying to do with my clients is, it's not to say, hey, don't focus on it. Because I think that's the polar opposite end of it. And that's equally as wrong. but what are you trying to get from it? Because if you're trying to use this visibility as strictly the gap to make up for what you've lost on the organic side, maybe in the future it'll, make up for it. Maybe not. Yeah. Probably not. So I think it's just that. Long story short is I think it's trying to understand what value do you have. If you are commercial intent e-commerce and you want to be showing up in ChatGPT's, e-commerce type results, that makes a lot more sense versus, I'm a movie producer and I just want my name out there, because now you're going into like impressions. And because I'm a performance marketer, if it can't be measured, it doesn't provide value. Yeah. And that goes into, Jason, actually, I wanted to hear your opinion too, but I'm going to layer on one more question. There's a lot of people talking about impressions being a KPI for like AI optimization, if you will. Mm-hmm. I'm very anti it because of what I mentioned before. I told people at SMX on stage, I was like, until my energy company allows me to pay my bill in impressions, I'm not going to count it as a success metric. But, when does search optimization, online optimization that isn't paid, when does that shift from performance marketing to brand marketing? Think about the budgets that go behind traditional billboards and TV, and their success metrics are impressions. And it's a completely different goal. And that's the only thing that I keep thinking in my head is like, we either have to pivot there, or we have to make sure that what we're doing is we're allocating the right percent of budget and the right percent of resources towards this, because it just plays a bigger role within performance marketing.
Well, you're preaching to the choir on that, right? I mean, having, I cut my teeth in Google ads back in 2005. So, I always joke that our goal in the group that I was working with at that time was like, man, we were like, we get a click for half a cent. That's wild to think about, right? So seeing both sides of that and having access to the data, it's really, really interesting. I do think that puts us in a good position to be able to have these types of conversations. They really set SEO on a shelf, set performance marketing paid on a shelf for a minute. What it really comes down to is that this really gets into a conversation around attribution and how broke those models are. So, here we came off of everybody's transition from UA to GA4, and oh my God, what is this? And then throw AI into the mix, and it feels like, I'm sure for a lot of folks, constant chaos, and it's hard to keep up with. So really what it comes down is what's mattering the most. And I would say that we've always made the strong case and perhaps argument on the organic side of our work to say, is that valuable traffic that you're getting? I am 50-50 with you on the impressions. I think that it is important that we talk about it as visibility. So if search is a monopoly board, and you're either, you're either renting the space, which is paid, you own it, or somewhere in there you have some squatters' rights.
Totally.
And so at every point along the way is a potential touch point for the customer, for the client. What's really challenging is the measurement aspect of that. Yep. So you have to do the best with what you have. But if you think about it, it's really wild to me. I spoke on this like 2.5 years ago. If you have search results, we had this situation in the travel and tourism space where a client of ours was, if you took the top 10 results, 7 out of 10 of those, it was either them or had a mention of them. Mm. Well, whose job was that?
Right.
Well, it was our job. It was our job. It was our work that got them either the citation, if you will, the mention on those other sites, or I'm not even talking about the link. I'm just talking about the mention, which all of that now, ironically, ladders up into what makes great, trails and signals for the LLMs.
Well, and
So
Jason, let me interrupt you just for 1 second because I want to validate everything that you had said, because I think that the really important delineation is that conversation about metrics and attribution. Because I wrote about this in the newsletter too, but like attribution is broken and it never favors organic or quote unquote free traffic. And the biggest problem that we have is I don't disagree with anything that you said. If I am the owner of the company and literally the number that matters most is all of it wrapped up, you're 1,000% right. Like, brand impressions do matter. Unlinked mentions matter. Paid, all of this matters. The problem is, and this is what I think we need to solve as marketers, is right now, budgets and attribution go hand in hand. And if my Google, GA4 organic search equals less than what they've deemed to be an appropriate ROI, SEO gets cut. Yep. And that's where it goes back. And I apologize for interrupting you, but I just wanted to make sure that, because that's, I think, where the biggest issue is. I think leaders that can truly understand the quote unquote halo effect will continue to invest knowing that it's a leg of the stool, even though attribution, where somebody has to win and somebody has to quote unquote lose, SEO especially is kind of on the losing end of it. And the bigger problem is there are just some leaders that are a little bit indifferent, or let's just say it's difficult to convince them to change their mindset.
Yeah.
They think you're just splicing and dicing data to support your narrative, when in the reality is not any of those narratives are right or wrong.
Yeah, I think I mean that's really accurate. We had an experience recently where we were able to get we were not managing the paid side of things, and we uncovered data in the attribution models that was not proper, and we basically we uncovered a lot of money that was being spent on branded, and lo and behold, we're able to see that shift 30% over to organic revenue. And I hate to say it, is there's nothing fishy about it. It's very black and white. You're spending X on your brand. When you have exceptional brand presence organically that we've worked extremely hard on, but it wasn't being validated by the fact that you were spending money to take that traffic away that you were already getting. So there's a lot that could happen. But I think that if we make this actionable, it really is for me, the old adage is watch out for scams, watch out for the scam sites. I think in your line from your article, very similar to something that we say at Black Truck. So like if some self-proclaimed expert tries to guarantee your placement at the top of something like ChatGPT, run fast. And we've said that for years about SEO. If that company, if that consultant, whoever is making guarantees on anything, I don't care if it's organic, paid, whatever, you shouldn't walk, you should run away from that. That is not who you want to work with.
I agree.
And I think that tracking the visibility metrics that matter today, it does come down to perhaps a reset in the conversation around attribution. I think that visibility and understanding what is good visibility for your brand, that might mean organic impressions. That might mean mentions on Reddit. That might mean that your YouTube videos have grown as well. Kind of to your point earlier in the recording, you really have to break that down depending on what the job is to be done, and help the brand understand what those success metrics are going to look like.
I agree with you 100%. I think the big thing that I've been championing, which is funny because Nick from 5 years ago would not even entertain this idea, is because attribution is so clunky and it can be manipulated. I'm almost less concerned with what the actual data itself is, because bad data trending is still going to show that narrative of like growth or flatline or decline. So it's more about having these conversations, and maybe this is what you were alluding to and what your team does. I'm going back to the table with leadership and just saying, trying to get peer alignment on what does success look like if we measure this and we go directionally in the right direction. Is that success? Because it's like we almost have to go back and simplify marketing before we can worry about being number one in AI.
Well, and I would say that yes, keep it simple is a really great mantra. These things are complex if you let them be complex. If you let it bog you down.
Yep.
And I think the goal is to not do that and to really be able to ask that question. How do you make money?
Right.
And make sure that you do get that documented on how you make money and that you have access to what that pipeline looks like for a client. For our clients that are in the B2B space, these sales cycles are 12 to 18 months. Now they're worth millions of dollars, no doubt, but making sure that you have very open and honest conversations about that is going to be big. And if anything, that individual who is making guarantees and is coming off as the quote unquote expert is probably not going to be willing to have those conversations, because when their back is up against the wall, they're probably going to, unfortunately, I'll make the bold statement, they're probably going to lack the business acumen that it takes to actually have that conversation.
Yeah. And I would argue that they're not even interested in it. It's a churning model. I mean, there's a reason why nobody is selling the snake oil at like an absolute premium price. They're selling it at the, magic bullet price, and their goal is just to always churn less than like the bottom 50% of their, portfolio. But the one thing, Jason, that I will also say is, we're talking a lot about, people who are making AI promises and optimizations and all these bold comments. I would say, though, your existing partners, it is fair of you, and I would say it's mandatory. You should make sure that they are sharing with you what they know, what they're testing, because there are some marketing partners that they are operating off of existing like SOPs and checklists, and all of that went out the window with AI. So if you are talking to your SEO partner, your paid partner, even email and all this stuff, like if it touches your website, you should be talking about AI. And if they can't share with you some of these acronyms that we kicked off the show with, and they can't say, how things are being measured, if not what the metrics are and your data, like that is equally as scary, because you're now already spending money with a partner that isn't shifting appropriately with the industry.
Right. I would agree. Keeping up on it is 9/10 of the challenge, right? And I would say the same goes with the paid media space as well. I'm just going to pull that side of our house into it too. Of these platforms are changing rapidly, right? I mean, there isn't a Monday that my team doesn't log in that Meta goes and makes some change to the interface, to they auto opt you into their AI, or things of that nature that you have to be aware of. No different than the algorithms continuously changing in search. Search takes on, again, many different faces. We have different platforms. If anything, more and more the searcher has a choice. The big challenge that the searcher does not have right now, which is going to be interesting in the next, I think, few months here, is it doesn't feel like you have much agency, meaning you don't have agency, you don't have choice. What is served to you is what's served to you. That's the menu. That's it. That's all.
Worse.
And the more discerning user is going to start to suss that out and figure out what platform best represents them. And so it's going to be interesting to see where things go. So Nick, I know we're kind of coming up on time here, but I wanted to thank you again. Thanks so much for joining me. I think that this space, SEO moves fast, but now we have AI, moves fast. But what I'm hearing is that curiosity and testing is always going to beat out BS and guarantees, right?
Without a doubt.
All right. So, well, in closing, where can people find you, subscribe for SEO for lunch, follow your work, that type of thing?
Yeah, thanks again, Jason, for having me. This is a fantastic conversation that I think we could have had for hours. First and foremost, if anybody wants to read the specific post that I wrote, I think Jason will probably link it in the show notes. But SEOforlunch.com is where you can sign up for my weekly email. Again, it's just kind of my spicy take on whatever's going on in the search world. SEO Jobs and ppcjobs.com. Those are self-explanatory. If you need a job, or more importantly, excuse me, if you're hiring, check that out. And you know what? If you need a second set of eyes, feel free to contact me at nickleroy.com. I love working with in-house teams and external partners. Let's just chat about what's going on.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Nick. I appreciate you taking the time and jumping on. And until next time, everyone, good luck.
Thanks for listening to the Redirect Podcast. If you enjoyed today's conversation, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. You can find show notes, resources, and past episodes at blacktruckmedia.com/podcast. That's where we dig deeper into everything we covered here on the show today. And if you've got feedback or a topic you'd like us to explore, we'd love to hear from you. Connect with us at blacktruckmedia.com.